Hello, hello, hello. My name is Day9, and this is Steal This Build number 3, Root Slush's crazy Zerg style of Infestor Zergling. Just want to note, I'm away in DreamHack right now. That is why I am recording these videos about us watching some very cool play, and then trying to discuss what the build order is so that way we can directly lift it and begin using it in the ladder. In the discussion of these builds, we will be using the following 3 areas. 1, the guiding principles of the build. 2, the opening. And 3, the deviations and responses that can occur. Excuse me. So, let's go talk about the first one real fast. Guiding principles would be something like the big ideas and broad themes of your play that you can just incorporate, that you can build your play around. Something like, I want 3 bases and I want to be going Ling, Baneling, Mutalisk. A statement like that allows you to have a direction no matter where you are, no matter how horrifically the opening went. If you have 2 bases and a Spire, you know, better get that 3rd base and that Baneling nest going. If you have 3 bases and a Baneling nest and no lair, you can say, I guess it's time to get the layer and begin getting that speed for my Banelings and Aspire up. They'll all help you no matter really how it opened up. The second thing is the opening, which is all the nitty-gritty specifics, like are we going to 10 pool, are we going to 15 pool, when do we gas, when do we scout, the specifics that will allow us to optimize a setup for the mid-game or defend against some different kinds of early pressures. And the final one, the deviations, can be things like against an early expand, I do this, but against 1-basers, I do that. It can be planned deviations, or it can even be something like, oh my god, I lost a bunch of drones, how do I deal with that? These kinds of things. We're going to look now at Root Slush's game, where he's going to be going Infestor Zergling, and part of me had a little bit of a hesitation to do this game. There was only one game in the MLG Columbus series where Slush used this style. And I always want to have like 3, 4, 5 data points. You know, I always want to be able to say, here's the way he Ling Infestors against Roaches. Here's the way he Ling Infestors against early expands. We're going to see one example of Ling Infestor here that's going to be quite eye-opening regardless. And despite the fact that there are going to be some holes in our knowledge, despite the fact that there's going to be things like, how does Slush deal against an early expand? I want you to think of those as not problems with an opening, but opportunities for exploration. Because it's easy to get in the habit of just stealing what other people are doing and then just sort of closing your eyes and, oh my god, I hope it works, alright, cool. And if it's not working, oh, I guess I'll do another build. In fact, when you are trying to come up with your own unique styles or stealing your own builds, what will almost always happen is you'll say, I'm going to open this way, and this will allow me to kill Banshees and Hellions and almost any fast tech. But I'm really going to struggle against some of those early expanders. And that's what makes it an interesting opening. You're going to see how much of an advantage you can try to pull away from everywhere where you're already good and sort of push into where you're weak. So maybe not trying to be as good against Banshees, so that way maybe you can be a little bit better against early expand. We're going to see a little bit of that come in here, where we're not really going to know, but we're going to kind of discuss some ideas and see where we could begin going. Let's go into the game. I will also note that I already completely recorded this Steal Your Build, but my microphone was unplugged. I don't know how that happens because it's all the way at the back of the computer, so this is it around number 2. So, going into the game, great, we have Root Slush at the top right. And in the bottom left, we're going to have Liquid Ret. This is from MLG Columbus. At this point in time, these players are tied 1-1. And whoever wins this advances next round to play against Idris. This is a real big deciding situation, which is what gives me a lot of confidence in the fact that Slush went Zergling Infestor. If he is 1 game away from elimination from a major tournament, he really, really should have some big trust in his play. Now, let me note why so many people hate Zerg vs. Zerg is because it feels very fragile. It very much so feels like, oh man, can I really get away with a drone, or do I need to build a roach to close off this entrance? Well, let me try to build a drone. And then Zerglings swarm up and you get surrounded and you're angry and you're like, well, I guess I got to build that roach next time. And then you still get overwhelmed and you think, man, I got to build more roaches in the next game. And it seems that no matter what you do, you have to end up building tons of units, and every time you try to sneak in a drone, you get punished. Oh, what a big crisis. Well, we're going to see Slush have an answer to a lot of that early fragile problem that Zerg seems to have. And it's going to look very different from your typical Zerg vs. Zerg play. We're also going to see some craziness happen, which means that our opening is not going to be as straight up. It's not going to be, it's not going to be something, where we can say, all right, I'm going to 15 pools, 16 gas, 18 gas, and then I'm going to build a queen and a queen. It's not going to be like you following it like you're going shopping. It's going to be a lot of changes. So Steal This Build episode is going to be much more focused on how the guiding principles are helping us, and less focused on how the opening is helping us. We're going to look at some really opening-focused stuff in episode 4 of Steal This Build, so stay tuned for that. But anyways, going back to the game. So we're going to see some craziness come up. We want to discuss some of these guiding principles. First, I'm going to speed up and notice some weirdness. I'm going to kind of gloss over this a little bit. Okay, he's building a pool, but then you're noticing some more drones are getting built. And you're noticing, some more drones are getting built. There's no gas going down. Well, he couldn't possibly be thinking about expanding early on here. Wow, another drone? I think a lot of people are getting really surprised, and even I am opening myself up a tasty energy beverage. And there, extractor, spine crawler, queen, more drones. Okay, that's weird, right? This is a very odd moment in time as is. Now, you'll notice I haven't moved the camera at all. I've just looked at this. And let's say you had only looked at this moment in time, and you would say something like, all right, well, I'm doing good. Oh, no, I'm getting attacked. And then you'd lose, and you would want to do a direct adjustment to your play. You'd want to say 15 pool feels too late. I will 12 pool. Oh, that gas feels too early. I'm getting it later. Oh, I'm getting too many drones. Let me build more Zerglings. Direct changes to your play. But what I want to point out is some very, very clever adjustments that Slush did. Right? Let's say you're Slush a month ago and you've been losing to all this early stuff. What adjustments do you make? Not the earlier pool, not the more Zerglings, but the Overlord scout patterns. This first Overlord moved all the way along this right attack path. It was spotting here, right when it left the base. It was spotting here in the middle of the map. It was spotting here as it approached, and now it's still here doing more spotting of attack paths. The second Overlord, checking the attack paths along the left side. You can get an unbelievable read on what your opponent's doing based on when you see Zerglings. So hell, these Overlords are giving all the necessary information we need. We don't even need to send out that scouting drone. Very subtle, absolutely critical. It also means that if you are doing this build, mechanically, you're going to have good eyes. You're going to have to be watching that mini-map a lot. You're going to have to be studying your opponent's builds in your own replays. So that way you know, ooh, I see Zerglings at 3 minutes and 52 seconds. What does that mean? Good. And here is our extractor going down. We're seeing this queen get built. Now, I don't think that this is the most refined way to do this style, because we're going to see Slush actually float his minerals between 300 and 400 for most of the game, as a matter of fact. But I still want to note, second queen coming up right away. Overlord in an attack path. This Overlord watching 2 attack paths. This Overlord is going to be watching here, watching an attack path, right? We're having a very watchful eye. And even note, Slush actually bounced down, checked to see if there was an expansion, and is now pulling back again. I do not know what Slush would do against an early expand. I have no idea. Therefore, what I'm going to do is ignore it for now and save that discussion for later, and suffice to note that we are against a one-basing player. So, Slush, by getting this ridiculously fast spine crawler and these ridiculously fast queens, is fairly defended, and now he's going for Zergling speed. Pausing right now. Let us note this principle. Actually, I'm going to wait for this queen to pop out. Come on, queenie. Come on, fatty. Come on, fatty. There she is. Alright, we have this defensive trio going on early. We got the 2 queens, we got the spine crawler. This is going to let us defend almost everything early on. And I want you to think a little bit about the way you normally have to defend things with Zerg. Especially in Zerg vs. Zerg. In this position, an attack's coming. Normally, I guess I'm going to make a lot of Zerglings. If I build a Roach Horn, better build a lot of Roaches. Oh, God, he got a Baneling next before me? I guess I better micro perfectly and make nothing but Zerglings, right? It's this kind of feeling where you just are constantly feeling pushed to razor's edge. But, first of all, note that these are fat units. both F fat, as in they take up a lot of space, and pH fat, because they can deal with a lot of the early ling pressure. Roaches are going to pose a little bit more of a threat, but given the amazing placement of our overlords, we can see a lot of that coming early on, mainly against Zergling Baneling. These are good units, just as a general note. Most importantly to note, it is almost a larva-free defense. Let me use my favorite example ever. Suppose there is an attack coming that you could defend with 20 Zerglings or 5 Roaches. What should you choose? Well, 20 Zerglings is going to cost 10 larvae. 5 Roaches is going to cost 5 larvae. Regardless of what resources are being used mineral and gas-wise, if we go with the 5 Roach defense, we have 5 larvae left over that we can spend on drones. Here, with 2 Queens and a Spine Crawler, that is a 1 larva defense. Queens cost no larva to build. None. The Spine Crawler costs 1 larva to build, because it's 1 drone, so that's why we've been able to get a ridiculous amount of drones. First guiding principle. In Zerg vs. Zerg early on, I can get this trio of 2 Queens and a Spine Crawler early to get a big drone lead. Look, we're going to be at 17, we're going to be at 20 in just a minute. Meanwhile, Rhett is doing all his fancy ling massing. We're even seeing Slush trying to keep a good count on the amount of Zerglings that are going his way. He's in good shape against this. Second gas guys are going down. We're also going to see this spawning pool begin to go. Going to be getting the obvious Zergling speed. We're going to see Slush. He's going to move his Spine Crawler just a pinch late. There it ends up coming. Notice this flood of units that came in. Thank you. Attack path placemented fanciness. Overlords. Yep, we're doing a little block here. This is why people like going for this dual queen defense. Picking off a lot of Zerglings. Now, Slush trying to get his own Zerglings in there. Here is suddenly a crazy moment in gameplay time. Zerglings get into our base. Many Zerg players would pride themselves in never letting this happen, but you know what? This will happen in Zerg vs. Zerg with, I guess I would call it a non-trivial frequency. This happens enough that you have to think hard of how you're going to cope when this does happen. So Slush has been producing a lot of Zerglings. He still has, still had a good amount of drones. He was at 20, he lost 3. This let Rhett swing ahead just a little bit. But now we're going to see Slush finally go and get his layer up. Note, though, that with all these minerals and gas being floated, this layer, I think, could have been up earlier. Not going to talk too much about the opening elements. Still want to focus on the guiding principles element, because I'm not gonna lie. If these minerals are quite high all game long, and Slush still wins in a dominating fashion, it means that if we improve the opening, we're going to win in a dominating-er fashion. We're going to be even better than dominating, which means that the fundamental thought process behind this opening is really, 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 really solid. I want to say that one more time. There's a lot of build orders that have basic ideas that are so good, even if you do a sloppy job of executing, you can win a lot of good games. An easy example would be in the old Lost Temple, just dropping a tank on a cliff where a Zerg player was. Didn't really matter if your macro was that bad or good, You could screw up a lot. Still get that tank on his cliff and kill off a free expansion. Yeah! That's such a good idea. No reason not to do it, right? So we're going to see that here in Slush's play. That's why we want to talk a lot about the guiding principles in this particular daily. And then we'll come back to the opening a little bit later on. Now, I want to note, so we have a lot of Zerglings. They're going to check around here for any sort of Zerglings trying to block the expo. I want you to think about what advantage Slush has. Let's just talk about what we have going on here. We're getting a layer. We have a good bit of drones. I'll even remove this production tab because we don't really know that much about what's going on here, right? So we have to talk about what our presumed advantages are. We probably have a little bit more gas than our opponent. We might have a good amount of drones. What are some other advantages? Feel free to get abstract. Feel free to say something like, I have more mobile units. That would be, for instance, if I had a lot of speed Zerglings and you had a lot of slow Zerglings. I have the mobility advantage. Do I have more units? I have a bigger army advantage, maybe. But there's a big, big, big advantage. That's one of my favorite advantages. It has to do with the Spine Crawler and the 2 Queens. I want you to think about what it was. One thing that Spine Crawler and 2 Queens allowed us to do was to build those drones early. What else could it be doing? Counterattack advantage. That's the one I wanted to say. Yes, that is right. Hopefully you thought of it as well. Counterattacking advantage, so awesome. Anytime you're in an amazing defensive position, counterattacking is going to be so good for you. So good for you. This generally happens when you have faster units or a better defense. As we can see, our fatty units, our trio of 2 queens and a spine crawler, are going to be what allows us to do this. So this move by Slush, this is actually a very reasonable play. This is actually easily incorporatable into this play. So what we're going to see is, okay, so Slush now sees that there's this expansion down here. He sees there's some Zerglings. He knows his opponent can't have that many drones because he opened up with a lot of speed Zerglings and then got an expand. So he can't be doing that much craziness. He can't like be getting a layer and be getting roaches and be having a lot of drones and have a lot of speed Zerglings. He can only have a few of those. So we're going to see Slush, look at this, amazingly go right on back to drone production. He has a small amount of units. This is not that many Zerglings, especially at this point in a Zerg vs. Zerg. But he's getting a lot of drones because he's going to rely on this counter-attack advantage. And there he is. He sees the Zerglings move out. Aha! Zerglings moving right along. He's going to be able to get a free queen. Now, it's very typical to say, as people will be like, oh, you got lucky. These Zerglings were able to sweep in and kill off a queen. If that didn't happen, you would have lost. No, that's not accurate. A lot of plays that have a strong counterattack flavor to them operate in the following fashion. If you move out at inopportune times, I punish you hard. Therefore, you're strongly encouraged not to move out. What does this mean? Oh my gosh, the powering from Slush makes total sense now. He's able to power very, very easily. In fact, he even kind of wants you to do the counterattack. Or he even kind of wants you to attack his main, so Slush can counterattack. This also means that Slush has the opportunity to get some of those more tech units that he wants. Slush could possibly even get his expansion up a little bit earlier. It pins the opponent back. If you're doing a normal Zerg vs. Zerg, whoever has more units is going to be the one pushing hard, right? Because most Zerg vs. Zerg is kind of this tug-of-war effect. I have more Zerglings, I'm running at you. Oh, no, I have the more Zerglings. Oh, I have more Zerglings now. Sort of this tug-of-war looking thing. But with a counterattack, if it's like, I have more Zerglings, then you can just sort of disappear. And it's like, well, I'm going to go attack. Oh, no. It doesn't even matter that Slush has a smaller army at this point in time. Doesn't matter in the slightest. It's going to work out great. So right now we have the second guiding principle idea. If we set up these good defenses early on, speed Zerglings are going to be very, very solid on maps that are very open because we have this counterattack opportunity. Sure, Slush could open up 2 queens and a spine crawler and go roaches, but he wouldn't be able to do that counterattack advantage nearly as strong. So we saw Slush really flood Zerglings for like the last 2 or 3 batches of larvae because of the fact of this counterattacking being so strong and because of the fact that we've already built up so many drones. So second big principle. So there's the attack coming in. Whack, whack, whack. And what we're going to see slowly pop up is, I would call it my favorite aspect of this play from Slush. First of all, when you're in a field like this, hit hold position on your Zerglings. This will force them to hit whatever is closest to them, so you can end up picking off drones a little bit more easily. So there's Slush hitting hold position. Notice these 2 Zerglings not moving at all. They're on hold position. But all these drones taking significant damage. Hold position. See you later, drones. And now Slush is going to move forward. Likely going to be hitting hold position if the drones encounter him again. But we're going to hit this point now where, obviously, this is a good amount of damage. Alright, this is looking great for Slush. He's going to do a smart thing. He's just going to pull right on back. He doesn't want to suicide these Zerglings. So now, if we look at the unit counting station, we can see that it's not crippling on either side, right? 24 to 20. You're not going to know in a game, generally, if you have that many more or fewer drones than your opponent in a Zerg vs. Zerg, unless you're having a really, really sharp eye. Let's pretend that we don't, right? What have we seen as Slush? We've seen not a lot of drones. Here's going to come up my favorite guiding principle of all. When we see our opponent have not a lot of drones, and we're going to be going for this Infestor play, we can begin essentially an arms race where we're going to make only Zerglings. How will our opponent respond? Well, by the typical methods of Zerg vs. Zerg, we'll see him respond by continuing to make a lot of units. He doesn't really have that much leisure to drone up and then get more powerful roaches up. He can maybe get some roaches, but he's going to have to get a lot of Zerglings anyways. Or even if he does devote 100% of his resources to roaches, still, same idea. We are forcing him not to make drones, not to step farther ahead in that economic battle. So this is very much so, I guess I would call it a tactic, like a deviation. There could have been something completely long-term planned from Slush, but suddenly, I did a counterattack, we're both low on drones, let's proliferate, right? Let's go crazy. So we're going to see Slush is going to be making lots and lots and lots of Zerglings. This is very clever. His layer finishes. Here comes the evolution chamber, the infestation pit. More Zerglings getting made. With this counterattack advantage, Slush can freely pull Zerglings like this and isolate. Very smart play. These other Zerglings were moving up here to the main. Go ahead. I have a Spine Crawler, 2 Queens, and a bunch of Zerglings here to greet you. Counterattack advantage doesn't just have to be about you running into his base. It can even be about you isolating all these Zerglings. See how Rhett is constantly pinned to be on the defensive? Constantly pinned back. Here comes the Expo. Still note that Slush has been floating at like 400 the whole game. I think there could be more elements of efficiency. I want to keep bringing it up, but I'm still not going to address it as directly yet. So there we see Infestation Pit popping off. Look at this. Nothing but Zerglings getting made from Rhett. In the unit station, we see 32 Zerglings for Slush. Rhett even knows this. So Rhett is going to respond by making a lot of Zerglings. This is the proliferation I was talking about. The arms race of who will overrun who. Seems kind of silly because, or in a normal sense, like for instance, let's say that we're playing against a player like Idra. The way that a player like Idra would operate is Idra would say, oh, we're doing a proliferation. You're trying to make as many units as you can early on. Alright, I'll make as many units as you're making, -2. And then I'll make 2 drones. It's really, really hard to play that way that Idra does. But you know what? Really good players will do that. They're going to get just two workers in there. Then all of a sudden this player who's going all units, no workers, ugh. Well, that's not good. Okay, well, maybe we'll make some more units and try to be really aggressive. And they try to do the big attack. And Idra relies on that defender's advantage, the fact that the units that Idra makes pop out closer to the battle than the attackers does. Idra's going to be able to stay alive. With his 2 to 3 workers, he's going to be in good shape. But think about the way that the Infestor works compared to all the other units. If we get, like, 8 more Zerglings out, alright, we're going to swing the battle a little teensy bit more in our favor. If we get 8 or 4 more roaches out, we're going to swing the battle a little bit more in our favor. But if we get 4 Infestors out, holy crap! We're going to swing it way hard in our favor, right? With 1 well-planted fungal growth, we can easily do absurd amounts of damage, especially to Zerglings, where they're suddenly 1-hit kills. Oh, that's going to be amazing. So the reason that Slush is encouraging this arms race, where we're both making tons of Zerglings and tons of roaches and tons of units, is going to pop in these Infestors as a kill play. And right when those Infestors pop out, Slush can either make more units, or he can just make some drones. Either way, all that Slush is doing is he's seeing, oh my god, you're low on units, you're low on drones, I'm going to keep making Zerglings, get my Infestors out, and punish you. Brilliant, brilliant move here by Slush that is incorporable into any Zerg vs. Zerg style. I don't know if incorporable is a word. Incorporatable. It is able to be incorporated into many, many styles. So here's Slush boldly doing this attack. What if Rhett has more units? No big deal. Slush can always pull back and has enough units here to be able to defend against a counterplay. So here's Slush pulling back. Thank goodness for the fastness of Zerglings. Here are 4 Infestors popping up. Notice again it's been this proliferation. Both of them very low on drones. Everything looks essentially even. Yeah, I know there's 2 queens and 2 more drones, but you know what? Effectively identical. Even making the same amount of things. Even Rhett trying to plan for that long term. But you know what? That little trio, the queen, the spine crawler, the queen, look at it still helping us at the 10-minute mark. How wonderful. That counterattack advantage is still ever present. In the exchange, we see Slush coming out marginally ahead due to a bigger concave, due to having these two beast units in here. But the thing that's really going to kick it into his favor is these Infestors that are about to pop out. Now, here's a big moment where preference kicks into play. Slush is very much so the player to go for an aggressive kill sequence. Just pop right in there and try to end you because he knows he can. I would make drones. I love making the games go on long. I like longer games. I have more comfort in longer games. Just gonna make this game extend on out. Very cool. Sure, Rhett gonna poop out this little thingaroo. Many Zerglings going through, but here comes the kill sequence. Oh my gosh, poor Red, who's been making drones all of a sudden. He made drones in that entire proliferation race thingamajiggy. Now, let's pretend for a moment that Red had made only Zerglings. Had made only Zerglings. And let's say that we were dead even in Zergling count. Watch how one-sided it will be still, because all of a sudden, bam! This fungal growth hits a lot of Zerglings. So I'm actually going to deselect these Zerglings and find out exactly how many Red hit. Oh, 16 Zerglings. Free. Ba-da-dum-bum-ba-dum-ba-dum. That's the turning of the tide right there. What could Red have done? Well, not that much. After Slush did the counterattack here, where he saw that there were not that many drones. It's less, oh my god, I did a lot of damage, and more, hey, there's not that many drones here. I mean, hell, if Slush walked in there and just saw not a lot of drones, because apparently Red had been making units, and then Slush left without doing any damage, just was a scouting party of like 40 Zerglings, right? Still, this play is going to work. This is great. This is very cool. Steal this play. There's Rhett, losing his hatch. Slush going for the non-greedy play. He's just going for the most vulnerable point in this hatchery, because again, these Infestors are a good stepping stone that will allow you to make drones. Slush, again, very much so a player who favors the kill sequence. Very much so favors the flooding with lings. But I mean, you just picture if Rhett had been making Zerglings the whole time to match Slush. The fact that Slush went straight for the Infestors. The fact that Slush cut out Banelings, cut out Evolution Chambers and Upgrades, cut out Roach Warrens, went all lean. Means that his army is just happening very fast and very aggressively. And there's the gack up. Oh, good game, well played. Slush wins. So let's go ahead and review for the second time, because again, this is the second recording I've done. Talk about those big guiding principles. There's three that I can see here in this play. The first one is the double Queen Spine Crawler opening. That allows us lots of freedom and lots of relaxation. It allows us to build more drones early, to maybe get a faster layer, to get a faster second gas. You don't have to go Infestors after that. I've seen Slush go Mutalisks many times on his stream, that, by the way, you should definitely check out. I believe it's justin.tv/rootgaming2. But yeah, so the double Queen Spine Crawler for powering early on. Getting speed Zerglings and using the defense from the #1 point to do a lot of counterattacking, advantage, setting that up. Having all those overlords in key places, very key places. I'll even come back to the game really quickly to just note as I come back here. Look at this. One overlord on the left, one overlord at the right, third overlord here, spotting both sides of this. There will even be a fourth one over here. All right, so the counterattack advantage. And the third one, noting that when our opponent is very, very low on drones, we can do this arms race where we're getting a lot of Zerglings, forcing him to get a lot of Zerglings and or Roaches and or Banelings, and then getting those Infestors out to really punish our opponent. It requires some good reading on Slush, some ability to pop in there, especially noting that our opponent is likely low on Banelings. But these three big ideas helped Slush win this game. Now let's talk a little bit about the opening aspect. We saw Slush very high on minerals and gas throughout the whole game. We can accelerate our build. What do I mean by acceleration? Do everything you did, but instead of doing a pool on 15, do a pool on, say, 12. Instead of doing a gas on 18, a gas on, say, 15. You can, instead of accelerating, do an add-on to the build. Do everything the exact same, but maybe try to just throw down a Roach Warren in there, or a Baneling Nest in there. Adding on some structure that you didn't have before. I much prefer acceleration. I much prefer just doing things a little bit more quickly. if my money is looking too high. There could have even been some slight adjustments to, when the drones go down versus when the Zerglings go down versus when the Zergling speed goes down, those sorts of things. But again, feel free to optimize that to your own liking. But let's talk about the deviation one, the last one I wanted to talk about. Note that I had no answer for what to do when there was an early expand. We saw that Slush was able to pretty handily knock down Rhett, who went for a speed Zergling hatch play. I've seen Slush do this exact play before and punish a lot of speedling into hatch players. But against an early expander, I'm not so positive. I mean, our counterattack's still going to work. We're even going to have earlier Zergling speed if we're doing it right, so we can do some poking and prodding as we're expanding. This is one of those moments where you're going to have to do your own problem solving and your own cracking in there. But the fortunate thing that, and the whole reason I put Slush's build in the Steal This Build series, is that it's so clearly effective against a set of openings that you can use this opening, cross those out of your list of concerns, and now you have a smaller box of concerns. So maybe you will do something like maybe get Infestors a little faster, maybe get Zergling speed a little faster, maybe get more drones. I don't know. It's a realm for you to explore with the comfort of knowing that you're not experimenting around with the build cold. You know it has efficiency. You've seen it in this game in a tournament situation where everything's on the line. It worked fantastically. So thank you, Root Slush, for being kick-ass. That's going to wrap up this edition of Steal This Build. I'm Day9, and I will see you very soon. Watch me on DreamHack, day9.tv. Wahoo!